Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shaw.
Well, hello and welcome to the return of Countryside here on Manx Radio. And in this week's programme, we'll be talking to our newest member of the Countryside team to find out her background, particularly in the farming world as well. And we'll be finding out how the vegetable growers on the Isle of Man have been coping with the extreme wet weather that we've been having and how they've managed to keep up supplies to the Isle of Man shops and supermarkets. Also, we'll be talking about lambing, how the weather's been affecting the lambing season in the Isle of Man, because a lot of farmers busy at this time of year coping with trying to keep the sheep all in good order and keep the lambs healthy as well. So sit back and enjoy the new series of Countryside.
Manx Radio's Countryside is brought to you by NFU Mutual.
Well, hello and welcome to the new series of Countryside, and I'd like to welcome with me a new member to the Countryside team, Kiri Kermode. Hello.
Hello.
And welcome to Countryside. I hope trying to make you feel at home, but of course, it wouldn't be fair to, without reflecting on the sad loss of the Countryside member, John Kenyock, last year. And John, so familiar voice in the Countryside, and, he was unique, wasn't he? And you knew him very well as well, Kiri.
Yeah, John was always a well-known figure in the Countryside, especially at the shows. He'd always do a great interview with all the prize winners and various farmers on the day. It was always great to listen to him, especially on the Sunday after the event. Yeah, he'd be sadly missed.
Yes, he will. I mean, it's farming, everything. We all have things that happen on the farms, and, farmers are one of the people that do particularly come through crises, with particularly this year as well, as we'll see with the weather that's been happening. You yourselves at Orrisdale Farm at Santon there, it's been a tough all year for the farming community, certainly, hasn't it? As well as the market garden and vegetable growers, as we'll hear later in the programme.
Oh, the weather has been absolutely terrible for this back end. At least it's stayed mild, but the serious amount of rain with the flooding and various things has really affected especially the sheep that are outside. A lot of the cattle will be in this time of year, but underfoot it's absolutely sodden, and it'll make life very difficult for a lot of farmers, I imagine, bringing hay and feed out to sheep and the extra costs. It'll be a hard time of year.
You've spent, I think, most of your tiny days working on the farm up till the present day as well.
Yeah, I've always took an active role in farming, always helping mum and dad after school when we were younger, and then leaving school at 16. It's something I've really enjoyed, especially the showing and pedigree side of it, a little bit more interesting than everyday farming. Some days is harder than other days, and the winters can be long and dreary, but there's lots of plus points to it. It's a great way of life, and you meet so many good friends and people throughout the year and across the water as well, involved with agriculture.
Yeah, and have you found it tough to stay in the farm when you think of the temptations that's outside the farming world in the financial sectors and all? Oh
yes, the money reward side of things. Compared to my friends, it isn't always the best in farming. But your freedom to do what you want when you want, with it being a family business, you can choose what you want to do in the day yourself, and that freedom is priceless a lot of the time.
What about away from farming?
I enjoy sports, especially netball and athletics. I've always been involved with a lot of team events, competing in the Isle of Man and in the UK. You get to travel a lot with that. Young farmers is also a good thing to be involved with, the tug of war and the hockey, and travelling away to the UK to compete. It's a good movement to meet new friends and socialise as well. Yeah,
well, over the coming few months, I'm sure your knowledge on trees, hedgehogs, birds will be expanded for the people that you'll be talking to, hopefully.
Oh, I look forward to it. Yeah, it's nice to see what other folk do around the countryside, and a lot of time and effort goes into their hobbies and their societies, so I'm quite looking forward to meeting those people.
Well, you'll have heard us talking at the start of the programme about how the weather's been affecting farmers and everyone on the Isle of Man, I'd imagine, and particularly the market garden growers. I went around to Rendu Farm in Derby to speak to Stuart Allenson and put it to him that, well, his land isn't quite looking like a desert.
Not a desert, Simon, no. The dry isn't the problem. It's something to do with the water's the problem. Just the 3 months of wettest we've ever had on record.
Now, you took us out at this field where I think the carrots and parsnips, and I can see the tractor with the harvester on the back there. It's looking fairly grim. How are you getting it to travel?
It is grim, Simon. I mean, the tractor won't travel on its own. We've to put another tractor in front to tow it. It just won't. Conditions are the worst. I've been farming now since I left school. I've just turned the 50 now. It's that sort of age, and I've never seen anything anywhere near as wet as this for so prolonged. It's not that we've not had wet spells before, we have, but never for 3 months. It's the 3 wettest months ever on record.
And as a market gardener supplying a lot of the big local supermarkets and trades, I mean, how difficult has it been to actually keep them supplied?
Impossible at times, I've got to be honest. There's times that this year we've said, sorry, we just can't do it. Conditions really have been that wet. The machinery just would not work. There was no ifs or buts. You just couldn't travel at all. So sadly, they've had to bring it in because we couldn't do it.
That must be the case all over the island, mustn't it?
It is, yeah. It's not just here, Simon. You know the area well. This is one of the drier parts of the island, and we're struggling here, so it certainly is a grim winter.
Is it every crop that you grow that suffered, really? Not so much the actual growing of them. I suppose they got reasonable weather when they were starting out. Is it just been the time where you want to get them up?
Most of the crops have had a difficult time. We managed to get the potatoes out just before the continued wet weather carried on. The grain crops were out, but the other sort of vegetables, the carrots, the parsnips, the swedes, the cabbage, it really has been hard trying to get them out of the ground and keeping the good condition of the product with the continual wet.
You've got fields here, particularly the one we're in, got a sort of nice slope that you think would take the water away, but you've just shown me this ditch in front of us that just the part of it is washed away because there must have been that much water coming down.
Yeah, I mean, the fields here have been like rivers at times, Simon. You'd barely stand up in the water that's been running off them some days. It really has been, that bad. And you've seen it in other fields, just across the road from where we are. You've seen the water piling off the fields onto the road, and the road's been flooded.
What else can you do? I mean, this used to be, I remember as a young fella around this area, it used to be fairly wet, but you did a lot of drainage and got the irrigation system in so you can control it a lot better. That just hasn't been able to cope with it, has it?
No, it hasn't, Simon. It's because it's been the continued wet. If we got a break in the weather for any length of time, even 4 or 5 days dry, things would sort of dry up. But as I say, in that 3-month period, we've had one dry day where it's not actually rained.
Wow, and the figures that you have in front of you from the Met Office are quite incredible when you look at the statistics, isn't it?
Well, yeah, we've broke records from the November to January by 3.5 inches more than, sort of any other record. So it's not just we're, an eighth of an inch or, 3 mil if we're in, metric, but it really is horrendous amounts of rain that we've had to suffer.
No dry days, like you said, or was it one?
one dry day, Simon. I mean, we've had the odd day that there's not been too much rain, but the water table is just so high now, it really will take a good week, I think, to get things drying and start moving with things.
What about the effect it'll have on next year's crops, Stuart? I mean, you got to sort of take it on the chin a bit from the extreme weather that we've had this year. But I mean, will it affect the soil? Does it wash a lot of nutrients out of it that you'd have to use more fertiliser and things like that?
It will affect the soil, Simon. It will wash some of the nutrients out. The other thing is, the soil will be so compacted with this amount of rain, so it will take quite a bit of working to get it in reasonable condition. But more than anything, we're just going to have to be a little bit patient this spring and wait till it dries out before we can start on the spring work.
We came through a field where you had the potatoes in, which you said you managed to get up, luckily. But I mean, that field is still soaking wet and big pools of water in it. Should you be on the field working it now, or is it you just about okay, getting it ready for next time?
No, not a chance, Simon. It is just too wet to even think of going on, fields like that. They just have to dry with Mother Nature first and be patient until, they get certainly a lot drier than that anyway.
What about the industry itself? I mean, we can moan and worry about the year that's been, but I mean, with the still the support for local vegetables and potatoes that you grow? Is that still there? You still got a loyal following?
Yeah, we've got a very loyal following, Simon. I think people in the Isle of Man, you know, they understand the weather and the problems we have better than anywhere, I feel. You know, that bitter water, the boats, they realise, you know, that if the weather's rough, the boat's not sailing. And, you know, they understand the problems because they have to face this weather as well.
You don't worry about things like, will they get another source or keep bringing it in from away? Or do you still get the people that are still waiting for the local produce to come in?
No, we have a very loyal customer base, and certainly, you know, our main customer, Robinsons, they're very supportive, and, you know, as long as I can give them a sort of 24 hours notice, they'll bring it in, and again, give them a bit of notice when I can start a product again. So, you know, we work with the supermarkets, that they understand the problem as well.
New products be always on your mind, not thinking about setting up a couple of paddy fields of rice or anything growing now?
Well, I haven't thought about the paddy fields for rice, Simon. New lines, yes. You know, we did beetroot this year, maybe thinking about garden turnips for next year. I don't know whether we've got a unique crop that would grow in the Isle of Man under these wet conditions. You tell me, Simon. I don't know.
But all in all, I mean, I suppose the world's moving on. A lot of people are trying to eat a lot healthier. And I think vegetables still seem to get, pushed onto people that they are good for you, and straight from the ground and fresh and there in the shop within, half a day. You can't get much better than that. So that must encourage you to sort of keep going at times like this.
It does indeed, Simon. Vegetables tick the boxes for everybody. If you're not a meat eater, people still want the veg. If you're a meat eater, they want the veg to go with the meat. So, it's good all round that way. It's certainly a very good, healthy product. It's a product you can get fresh here in the Isle of Man, and you just can't beat the taste of the local product, Simon. That's what it's all about. It's that fresh local product.
I mean, you got quite a bit of staff here as well, Stuart. I mean, how are you keeping the morale up in this weather when they're out in it? Or they're pretty good to amuse themselves?
The staff are very good, Simon. They're in the job because they like the sort of work that we're doing. They like the variation. No, the weather, it is challenging. There's no doubt about that. But they accept it as it's part of the job. The Met Office locally are fantastic. We can rely on them very, very well to give us a forecast of when the best part of the day is to be out there and get the crops picked. And, we work with the Met Office as well on that.
So all in all, can't do much about it. It's Mother Nature at the end of the day, but to make it more determined to sort of get on it if eventually the weather dries up and you can get the land sorted again ready for the next crops.
Definitely, Simon. Yeah, it's a bigger challenge this year than most, but I look forward to the challenge, and we'll rise to it. We'll get the crops in the ground as soon as it's fit.
Stuart Allinson there from Allinson's Farms in Derby from the Rendu, telling me about, the dreadful season and the dreadful time they've had trying to soldier on, digging up carrots and vegetables and things like that. But certainly, as you heard Stuart talking through that, the faith hasn't been lost. That's one thing, and something you can't do, Kiri, isn't it? Keep going.
You got to keep going. Soldier on.
Yeah.
Manx Radio's Countryside is brought to you by NFU Mutual.
Well, we sent you on a fairly easy mission, we thought, for your first interview, Kiri, to talk about the lamon season, and fairly close to home because you're involved in it.
That's right. Lamon season is well underway at Orrisdale at home, and it's been so successful so far, but there's a long road to go.
Yeah, and it been a worrying time with the weather, or can you keep most of your sheep all indoors like modern farms have?
It has been a very worrying time. The sheep were heavily pregnant through a lot of that very wet spell back in November and December, and they really were struggling with the extra weight of the lambs inside them to plodge around the mud. So they have actually been inside the last 3 weeks on the run up to the lamon season, which has helped them, and they've got them fit enough to get the lambs out easily on their own. But it was a worry.
And you spoke to your mother, Carol, to find out more about the lamon season, how it's been going from her side.
Here we are in a gigantic polytunnel at Orrisdale, full of sheep and lambs, and still some ewes left to lamb. How is lambing going so far?
At the moment, it's been going very well. The one benefit of this polytunnel is that the dreadful weather that we've been experiencing protects the sheep and the lambs from that weather.
Do they live in the polytunnel all year round?
No, they don't live all year round in the polytunnel. We bring them in at approximately 2 weeks before their due date, and we also have the advantage of the fact that these ewes are pedigree Texel, and they have been artificially inseminated and synchronised so that they will lamb virtually together within the period of approximately 4 days. Any ewes that don't lamb at that time will have not held to that service, and we'll have a gap of approximately 17 days before the ones that returned and have been served naturally start to lamb. And these are the ewes that are in the middle pen here at the moment, the very, very heavily pregnant ladies. The first batch we've got comfortably out of the way, and the lambs are up and running round in the back of the polytunnel and also in another of our larger cattle units that we convert for them to run in and out, and they can go out in the fine days and come in if the weather isn't very nice.
So it's been a good lambing time generally. Has the crop been quite good with all the heavy rain back in October, November time? Has it affected the pregnancies and are the lambs bigger or smaller due to the weather?
Well, the rain didn't affect the ewes that badly through the back end, apart from the fact that it just was constantly wet, and like all the rest of us, they did get a bit depressed on it. They've held to their pregnancy pretty well. They're in fair condition now. The final couple of weeks before we brought them in, they were starting to struggle a bit with having wet underfoot, wet overhead, and the quality of the grass had finally started to tail away, because the back end, with the higher temperatures, the grass carried on growing for a lot longer, which boosted the ewe's condition further on into the winter, into the back end.
And there seems to be quite a lot of lambs and they're of fair size. Did it affect the size of the lambs?
I think the lambs have been nourished fairly well inside their mothers with having that longer growing season. We also supplement their feeding with feed blocks and minerals. And then when they come into the polytunnel, they're on ad lib hay, and they receive a sprinkling of ewe rolls, concentrate feed, just to do the transition into the shed.
So with them being inside, it seems like a costly exercise. Does it affect the amount of money you make on the lamb?
Well, this flock are a pedigree flock, and we are looking for a higher return from these lambs. They will be exported to the various pedigree sales as lambs. A proportion will be kept over and overwintered and brought out as shealing rams, and also some shealing ewes for other pedigree breeders to purchase. It does help towards the cost of our method of lambing. However, you have to look at the other side of how much hours would be spent running around fields in that dreadful weather trying to save lambs that were born by hedges. And also, when they're in, you can monitor their feed intake and adjust it accordingly. And it's a lot easier. Even I can catch a sheep that's lambing in the polytunnel, and everybody knows how nimble I am. And I can lamb it on my own, which I don't think would quite happen if it was having to go around a 12-acre field to try and catch her.
Or will all these lambs be kept as pedigree lambs? Will they all make the show ring, and will they be sold at Premier Sales? Or is there a few that don't make the grade, and when will you sell those?
There will be a few that won't make the grade. We'll start to choose our show team, which we take to the Highland and the Yorkshire and the Royal Welsh in another couple of months' time. The lambs that don't make that grade will be sorted through again, and by then they'll be nearly ready to go to the meat plant for just commercial price. The ewe lambs we keep longer. We run the majority of those on, and next year when they're shealing ewes, we sort through them again. Anything that's not quite got the right characteristics but are still good ewes, we will take away to Carlisle and sell in the big ewe sales in September as Euro dams. There are special designated sales for those type of sheep.
And will you lamb the crossbred ewes in these same conditions, or will they be treated differently?
No, the crossbred ewes, they're not due to lamb until well into March, when hopefully the weather will be a lot better, and they stay outside. It's only exceptionally that we will bring a crossbred in with any troubles. Other than that, they're left with a minimum of interference to get on with it themselves.
And with lambing inside, you're able to monitor the milk production of these ewes. I see there's a pen of 3 ewes here with 9 lambs, triplets. What can you do to help these ewes look after their lambs? Is it difficult? Do you have to bottle feed with them?
Well, the worst thing a farmer can see when he comes out is a sheep with 3 lambs, because a sheep only has 2 teats and inevitably one will fall by the wayside. At the moment, these ones are kept, they have all their lambs and they're mothering them very well themselves. They're getting no extra feed, the lambs. The ewes are getting a little bit more food than the rest of the ewes to up the milk production. But as they get older, the lambs will be offered a creep, a small lamb pellets that will help to boost their energy and put on weight. And then as they get older, one will be pulled off and weaned and go in with my megs, my orphan lambs. But he won't be fed on the bottle because he's been so used to his mother. But he'll get the same feed as my megs and treated the same way.
I see you have 6 baby lambs in this orphan pen. How have they come about, and will they remain as orphans, or?
The reason why they're in the pen was their mothers lambed and unfortunately, due to one reason or another, didn't have sufficient milk for 2 lambs, or had been missed during culling time and has lost one of her teats. So she has 2 lambs and only 1 teat, so we take the extra lamb off straight away. But having said that, if a ewe loses her own lamb, we foster that spare lamb onto her. But inevitably, I'll always have a few meg lambs, and everybody complains bitterly because I keep my lambs on milk for far, far too long. And the cost of lamb milk is exorbitant, according to my husband.
The lambs behind us here are now skipping and playing, and they're away from their mothers, doing their own thing. What will be the next step in these lambs' lives?
They will be tagged and weighed and heptavaced. The tagging and the weighing. The tagging is to identify them for the whole of their lives, and the weighing is their first step on their performance recording data.
Does everybody do performance recording data? What does this mean?
Performance recording is a management tool that a lot of commercial flocks use in the UK and some over here. It tells you how these animals are going to perform, how they will put on weight, whether they will be good to milk, and it's a very valuable tool.
A lot of commercial farmers will be looking at these data to pick their rams for the coming season.
Yes, they do. They rely on this data quite a lot, especially when we export our rams. Some farmers over here do place emphasis on figures as well, which is starting to become slightly more important over here as well.
So it's going to be a busy few weeks ahead for you and the family, weighing and tagging these lambs. Is it a long season? Do you get very tired?
Not so tired now as we used to. With having synchronising the ewes, it makes life a lot easier. It's full on for the 4 days and 4 nights, 24 hours, every 3 hours. However, it's not like lambing constantly for week after week after week. You do get a time to take a breath and catch up with all the rest of your work.
Well, there, Kiri talking to her mum Carol Kermode about the lambing season so far, and talk about that wet weather when you were talking to your mum there, and it's just been extraordinary. But I mean, the preparations that went into it this year. You've seen some of the hill sheep at Tholty Will that had been dyed orange just in case of snow and things like that, because we've had everything. And from your experience, which is the worst type of weather for that?
I think it has to be the snow. When there's the ground is completely covered with snow and there's no grass poking out and the sheep have got nothing to eat, or in some cases could be buried. A lot of manpower goes into searching for them and providing feed, and in some cases water for these livestock. That is a very worrying time. So I think it could be a lot worse. The rain is bad enough, but I think that we keep the snow well away, we'll be doing well.
All right, well, you've got through your first countryside, so are you looking forward to next week's programme?
Oh yes, we'll keep going.
Good enough.
Manx Radio's Countryside is brought to you by NFU Mutual.
So there we go, the first of the new series of Countryside complete with our new Countryside colleague on board, Kiri. How have you enjoyed your first one? It's a different thing sitting listening to it, I bet you.
Oh my word, I've always enjoyed the Countryside programme, but actually finding the information and putting it all together and interviewing somebody and having the questions there ready is very, very difficult. It's something you don't realise what goes on and how much time and effort goes into making programmes.
Yeah, but it will get easier. I mean, I think this is my 13th year at it now, so should have a bit of a hand at it. But, you know, I must commend you. You've done a sterling job on your first go, because even though you can't see many people here, it's still nerve-wracking, isn't it?
Oh, it's very nerve-wracking being able to string it all together and ask the right questions at the right time. It's been very difficult, but no doubt it'll get easier as time goes by.
It certainly will. That's all for this week then. Make sure that you tune in next week and listen to more Countryside.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com. Love being Shaw. Terms and conditions apply.